Hi guys, this week saw data released about both wage growth and inflation. While on the surface it seems to be good news, incomes are on the up and inflation has decreased somewhat. The important question is, of course, who is benefiting and who is losing out. Jonathan Portes, a professor of economics and public policy at King's College London, spoke to Sky News about the winners and losers, and if Rishi Sunak's government can take credit for both inflation and rising wages. Have a listen to what he had to say.
The second point I would make, and this is the important one, is about the distributional impact. What these figures also show is that inflation continues to hit the poorest households hardest. They've seen inflation up by perhaps 3% more than the richest households over the last couple of years. So people at the bottom end are getting squeezed. And you also saw that in the pay figures yesterday, where people at the upper end of the income distribution, working in finance and so on, are getting higher pay rises than people at the bottom end of the earnings distribution. So what's happening is we're redistributing money from the relatively poor people to the rich. And that's not something the Bank of England can address through interest rate raises. The government has to do something about that by providing more support to people at the bottom.
I mean, Rishi Sunak wouldn't want to be seen as a reverse Robin Hood, would he? I mean, do you think that the government policies are what has led to this fall? But when you look at the broader picture, you know, how are they doing the right thing?
No, I mean, I think, as I said, yes, these clearly, of course, it's the result of government policies. It's the result of successive cuts to the benefit system, not just under Rishi Sunak, but over the last 10 years or so. And we can see that in rising rates of poverty and deprivation, homelessness, and so on, and in particular around housing costs, where the very large cuts in housing benefit combined with the failure, of course, to build enough houses are one of the factors beyond both homelessness and the increased burden on people trying to find somewhere to live, particularly in the private rented sector. So we have this slightly odd position where the government is trying to claim credit for the overall fall in inflation, which of course has very little to do with the government and is everything to do with global forces in the Bank of England, just as the rise was. But it's not doing anything about the things it actually can control, which is who feels the impact of rising prices and wages.
This is why it's so important to listen to experts and not listen to politicians. Unfortunately, Nick Ferrari this morning on his LBC show was interviewing a government minister, and the minister was doing a victory lap, and to a certain extent, Nick Ferrari was commending him. Look, well done on bringing down inflation. As was pointed out here by the expert, this is not the government's doing, this is global factors. In the same way that when Rishi Sunak last year was blaming global factors on the rise in inflation, he can't claim that he is bringing down inflation. It's dropping because of oil and gas prices going down and other factors. But to the main point here, once again, there's a transfer of wealth from the poorest in society to the richest in society. The wage increases are being seen by those who are already on higher wages. And inflation, while it is decreasing, still means prices are going up. And this is something that, unfortunately, Rishi Sunak is still continuing to say, that, well, if inflation falls, people will have more money in their pockets. No. He's trying to spin this narrative that lower inflation means lower prices. No, it just means prices continue to increase, but at a slower rate. So I really wish people would call out, particularly the Prime Minister, on this, because it's a lie to suggest that lower inflation means people have more money in their pockets. They don't. And unfortunately, while the numbers will be presented in some very positive light, yes, wages are increasing, but as was pointed out, it's for people who are on higher wages. People at the bottom end of the economic scale are seeing both inflation eating more into whatever income they have and wage increases not keeping in line with inflation. So people at the bottom are, of course, getting poorer. Now, he also mentioned, of course, the role of austerity here and cuts to benefits. So people who are already struggling are seeing their benefits cut, and they're seeing the real impact now of austerity. Yeah, austerity introduced about 10 years ago had a massive impact, but it's continuing to have an impact. So we hope that going forward, the next government, the Labour government, will roll back these policies of austerity, will invest in the public sector, invest in benefits, increase benefits for ordinary people and people who are struggling, especially those at the lower end of the economic scale. Because if you don't, you're going to continue to see a transfer of wealth from the poorest in society to the richest. You know, the people who don't need a wage increase, who don't need to hold on to huge amounts of money, need to be taxed more. There needs to be the opposite going on. There needs to be a transfer of wealth from the richest in society to the poorest. This helps grow the economy as well. If people at the bottom have more money, then they're spending it in the local economy. The richest in society buy assets, and of course that drives up the price of homes and rents and stuff like that. Or they hoard the money in bank accounts, which doesn't help the economy one bit. So once again, instead of listening to people like Rishi Sunak, listen to the experts, because they actually know what they're talking about. Let me know in the comment section, guys, what you think. As always, your comments are greatly appreciated. Thanks a lot.